But
Yeah.
regarding Ellen White's plagiarism, I want to look at a common defense given by SDAs by way of hearing it from their scholars and academics. So again, referring to Dr. Judd Lake, in his book, this is what he writes, quote, "For those like Canright who espouse a more rigid view of inspiration, Ellen White's literary borrowing poses a special problem. If God gave her the exact words, they argue, why would she need to use the words of uninspired writers to express the divine revelation? Inspired writers get all their information directly from God, so they don't need to borrow expressions from the writings of other human beings. This understanding of inspiration doesn't take into account the literary borrowing done by the writers of the Bible. As noted below, the Bible is replete with literary borrowing as well as many other modes of divine human communication. Ellen White's use of literary borrowing to express the content of her visions was no different from the practice of the biblical writers. They often used literary borrowing to express the divine truths given to them through revelation, and this biblical practice is best explained with the whole person model of inspiration that takes into account both divine guidance and human participation." Close quote. So you've obviously heard this defense before, Steve. It is a common one that they give to defend Ellen White. They claim that since the biblical writers engaged in plagiarism themselves, it shouldn't be used against Ellen White. What are your thoughts on that defense?
It's just really sad. It's hard to believe that a person claiming to be a scholar would even write those words. But anyone who understands anything about biblical literature, and especially the times in which the Bible, was written, people don't understand that. I would expect any scholar to know this, but, the average person doesn't understand that the Bible of those ancient times did not have chapters and it didn't have verses. There was no way of referring to Romans 6:14. None of that existed. It was a completely different period. Most people didn't even have access to the scripts, to the manuscripts. And the scholars, the Pharisees, the rabbis, they had the scriptures memorized word for word. Jesus knew the scriptures word for word. Paul knew the scriptures word for word. It was completely understood. Even the people had a verbal knowledge of scripture that goes way beyond anything we can comprehend today, because oral traditions and people didn't have printing and writing the way they do, in the post-Reformation period. And so people memorize the Bible. Even the common believer often memorized most of scripture, but not near to the degree that the rabbis and the Pharisees and these people did. To accuse Jesus of plagiarism when he quotes from the Old Testament, if he doesn't give a reference or something, is just absolute nonsense. A person who would make this kind of equation to Ellen White is either smoking dope or being deliberately deceitful, because all the Bible writers who quoted from other Bible writers knew exactly what was going on. There was no mystery here. There was no deceit here. There was no attempt to hide where they were getting this stuff. It was just completely known. And there you're still talking about inspired writers from inspired writers. But that doesn't account for Ellen White borrowing from a bunch of people who write things that are completely imbecilic. Vital force physiology and all the crazy stuff Ellen White writes that she gets from other writers that no Adventist would try to say came from God today. I mean, it's just so ridiculous that I get really annoyed when someone of Lake's stature makes this kind of an argument. It just causes me to lose what little respect I may have had for him.
And these other authors that they love to appeal to, they didn't take these things from other people, copyright it, and then make a bunch of money off of it.
Right. Precisely.
And then get really mad when they're deported to Australia, like you said earlier, and their royalty is cut while they're gone. And they get fuming mad when their royalty amount gets cut.
She demands the highest royalties while other people aren't even taking royalties. And,
right.
She's saying it's not me, it's God. Oh, but I sure want these royalties. Everything about her is problematic.
And I know I got this stuff from other people, but no one's going to do the same to me because I'm copyrighting it.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Precisely.